So, you told me your things a little bit about creativity, staying in touch with your, self and others, and your creative kind of mindset. But other than that, what are you looking to improve in your delivery?
Oh, delivery. So what I want to do is get like a bunch of like examples from different people, different like artists that I look up to.
Okay.
I think that would make it interesting. That would give it like a lot of stories that you could tell,
Right.
Okay. Definitely use my own experience too, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess just make it more of like a cohesive thing and make the delivery like smoother. And then that's all I really have planned.
Okay.
So the rest is just I'm open to feedback, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. We can make that happen.
For sure, for sure.
You can start whenever you want, and I'll just time you.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
You're gonna have to do some imagining because my thing isn't like here.
That's okay.
No Wi-Fi.
It's all good.
So this is Picasso's Bathers, painted in 1918. It's a nice painting. It's very traditional,
Right.
very realistic. You know what I mean? It's pleasing to look at. But 10 years later, Picasso actually did revisit this in 1928 with his piece Bather. And this one is, it's quite honestly, it looks childlike, it looks like a kid painted it. It's very abstract, very, looks like it was maybe like quickly painted. So, one may ask themselves, why did he revert to this kind of childlike look when instead of, he could have been pursuing like technical perfection, you know what I mean? And this is because Picasso is less interested in his technical developments, and he was more interested in his creative developments. Yeah, creativity. I'm a big fan of creativity, art of any kind, and there's a common misconception among a lot of people that creativity is not just something that few people are born with, and it's like a magical superpower. But creativity is actually a skill, like any other skill that you can work on over time. Your laptop is off. I don't know if that's a bad thing, but
keep going. You're doing
okay,
great.
Okay.
It's going.
Yeah. Skill like any other thing. In the same way that you would learn a new sport, learn a new subject in school, or learn a new instrument, it's something that you have to begin and work towards over time. Here's another thing I forgot. Picasso once said that every child is an artist, but the trick is to remain an artist once you grow up. So, yeah, it's kind of a quote about maintaining, keeping that creativity that you once had when you were a little kid. And I have done a lot of talking about creativity, how good it is and how it is a skill and not a magical talent, but I haven't actually given you any advice yet on how to improve it over time. So I'm going to be giving you 3 steps to improve your creativeness in any category, not just art, but in all facets of your life, because it is beneficial to everything, really. So the first one I had was just to be more mindful of creativity when you see it. Try and look around, see, if you're into read something you might not. If you're into movies, watch something that you might not. I think that in order to be more creative, you have to know good creatives. You have to know what good creativity is. When you see it, you have to be able to figure out how exactly somebody thought outside the box. I'll toss out an example. If you watch a movie like Citizen Kane, did a lot of new things. Was very influential in the film world, and it's because a lot of rules were broken. Director thought outside of the box, and he delivered something that nobody had seen before. And since then, many people have looked to it as a source of inspiration. So next up is steal things. That's pretty much exactly what. Yeah, you just gotta steal. If you see something you like, just take it and emulate it. I guess analyze what the creator did. There's the classic phrase, "Good artists borrow, great artists steal," which I believe is also from Picasso. Yeah, pretty much. Here's an example. Director Quentin Tarantino, he said pretty much all of his movies are stolen. He can list the certain things that he took each thing from exactly, and just he has no shame about it because he understands that taking from others is such a vital part of creativity. You know what I mean? So yeah, steal. Just be stealing. You know what I mean? Next up is challenge yourself. in order to be more creative, you have to understand your comfort zone and you have to understand how to break out of that. So you have to know what you think that you're capable of, and you have to challenge yourself to go beyond that. You know, if you're a musician, maybe try and make something in a different genre. If you're an artist, try and draw something in a different style. It kind of goes hand in hand with the stealing and the being mindful of other creatives, because, you know, you have to just simply expand your horizons when it comes to whatever you're doing, you know. And even in the corporate world, this could be applicable, you know. You could think about the way that you're going about a meeting or the way you're going about some business strategy. You could just think about it in a way to just restructure that bad boy from the ground up, or when it's right now, you know. So yeah, appreciate it. Those are my 3 methods for improving your life creatively, applicable to all facets and beneficial in all ways. You know what I mean? We often have this creativity, you know, when we're younger as a child, and yeah, like Picasso said, the real trick is to maintain it, to work on it over time, and yeah, there's really nothing wrong with being more creative. That's about it.
Okay.
I wish I had my presentation. It kind of made it a lot better.
So, okay. That was really good.
Thanks,
That was
you
really
too.
good. I'm not just saying that was really good. I like the 3 methods. You told me to stand up for the rest of it. Okay,
Oh,
I'll just
really?
stand up.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess. I remember she said that during class. Ashley, if you're listening, no, you're not. Okay. So I liked your staying in touch with like your kid, like childhood, and embracing that. When you talked about technicality versus creativity in the very beginning, I would go into that more. Like I would make that take up more space, just because I feel like you could go somewhere with that. Like being technical is like logistics and you know, kind of left-sided. And I really think you could talk about like the brain, like how you have the right side, left side, and incorporating that. Like they should be intertwined together. They should. I think you could go a lot further with that. Just because people are intrigued on how they like themselves, like how they work. So that would be a good hook, like to get them like thinking about, oh wait, maybe my brain works differently, or whatever.
For sure.
Creativity, symmetry, skill. I think that's good, but I would go into what your creative skills are.
Okay.
Like what like you bring to this, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
You said you wanted to bring personal experiences, and I think that's how you obviously connect with the audience. So make sure that that's being like supported by that. And then remaining like having creativity once you grow up and bring that into your adult life. Like give examples on how you could do that. Like what aspects of creativity could you bring like into your work life, or different ideas for the corporate positions or whatever.
Definitely.
And then whereas the applicable, you said the corporate world, you could talk about like secondary education, higher education, or like, I don't know, like different positions that you might have, or how you can bring creativity into the lives of younger kids or like people growing up. Just make sure that carries through. And then like your recommendations of creativity again. And then I think stealing things, you're a really funny person, like in your presentation.
Thanks.
So I think making that funnier, like you could bring a little more like pizzazz to it, I guess.
My slide said steal shit.
I think that's funny, and I think people think that that's funny.
For sure.
So like bringing your humor into it more, just because you do a good job of that, and that keeps people engaged during your presentations.
For sure.
And you were talking about stealing. I know in the Creative Habits she talks about scratching, and I would like reference her book more, because I remember when we were doing this reading, you talked about that book, and so referencing that I think would incorporate like kind of support and evidence to back you up.
Yeah.
Especially since half the class read it. So like talking about that, or like even in regards to like plagiarism, you could make that a joke. Like don't plagiarize.
I could say
steal.
I stole this entire presentation from Creative Habit.
Yeah, you could. That would be funny. And I think a lot of people would resonate with that.
For sure.
I said a lot of great quotes. I did like all the Picasso quotes and director quotes and stuff. It's good you can memorize that, because I cannot do that. During your presentation, I would take up more space. I know you don't have like the actual thing behind you right now, but like don't be afraid to like make this stage your own, you know? And then again, just talking about like your childhood and what aspects of your childhood you've taken with you into college and you're gonna take with you into your professional life.
For sure, for sure.
Just to make it like a aha, like, you know.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, oh, I could do that.
Definitely, yeah.
But those are all the notes I had. I don't know if you just wanna like run it again and get like a little bit more this time, just cause I feel like you're good at bullshitting. So.
Yeah, for sure. I'll try, cause I tried to pick something I cared about, so I like would like know like a lot of like examples off the top of my head.
Absolutely.
So that's
Or
why.
even if you wrote down like a list of experiences that you're grateful you had as a kid that you could incorporate into the story, like
Yeah,
to
for
make
sure.
the story kind of come out of that. Just like bounce ideas off of or try different stories and I'll tell you if they're funny or
For
like
sure, for
whatever.
sure.
So I don't know if you wanna start, like where you wanna start, but I can time you again if that's
I could just start at the very beginning. You know?
okay.
Maybe I might. I'm gonna honestly double check if I can get the actual PowerPoint.
I believe you that it's there, like.
Yeah, no, for sure. But it definitely helped with like what I was trying to
Yeah.
say.
I actually have the creative habit with me, so if you wanna
Oh yeah. For
look
sure.
at it for anything, you're more than welcome to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I got this. I got like a PDF of it online for free, but I actually liked it so
Yeah.
much I got like my own little copy of it. I was a fan, you know.
It was a really good book. I think they have a lot of good stuff in there. Whenever you're ready,
For sure, for sure.
I'll stop you if I cease.
Definitely, definitely. Alright, so this right here is Bathers by Pablo Picasso. It's a 1918 painting. It was painted early in his career. It's very compositionally pleasing painting. The colors are nice. The people look fairly realistic, you know. But 10 years later, he actually chose to revisit this same scene, and he gave us this, simply titled Bather, 1928. Now, it's a little bit jarring to look at, especially considering how the last one was so technically traditional. This one is a lot more childlike in its delivery. You know, we see quicker brush strokes, we see more crude colors. But I really think it speaks to why Picasso is remembered and why some other traditional artists aren't, because he was more interested in developing creatively than technically. Picasso once said that every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up, and I think it's very true. Everybody is born with creative abilities, but as we grow up, some people lose them, some people forget to even have them. But creativity, like anything else in life, is a skill that you can learn, that you can develop over time, that you can improve at, you know. Just in the same way that you would learn how to ride a bike, learn how to play a new sport or an instrument, it's something that you might not be the best at first, but if you put in enough time and devotion, you will eventually be able to master whatever you want creatively.
Okay. So during that, do you have a creative obstacle? Like, have you ever had like
Oh yeah,
a blockade of some kind?
for sure.
Like a reference, like say something about it during that. Like when you're talking about like some people hit brick walls and like they're not remembered because they don't incorporate that creative thing.
For sure.
Like talk about how it's like in your life. Like do you have an example like that?
I was gonna bring up the fact that like, I just know so many people who are like, I'm not creative, and
Yeah.
like, you know, they're like, I don't have a creative bone in my body, and I was just gonna be like, yes you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Maybe like ask a question. I know that's so
For sure.
cheesy. Actually, don't hate me. But like in the middle of it, not at the beginning. Be like, how many of you have had like a creative like hurdle that you
Yeah.
haven't been able to overcome? Like if it's a writing, like writing a paper, making a piece of art, you know, making whatever for your parents for the first whatever. It
Yeah,
doesn't
for
matter.
sure, for sure.
Just something like that to get them engaged like even more so and like tie it back to you as the presenter.
And then I could be like, this hurdle isn't the end all be all. Like,
Right,
yeah,
right,
something like that.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'm definitely gonna snap a picture of those after this.
okay.
For those videos.
Okay. No, not for the end all be all. I'll keep writing while you keep going.
For sure, for sure. So, okay, gotcha. So I'm doing a lot of talking on creativity as a skill, but I haven't actually yet offered any advice on how to creative, to develop a creative side. So, first up, I'd like to recommend that I'd like to recommend that you branch out, that you simply look for different creatives, different ways that things were approached in the past. I really believe that having a good knowledge of creatives and good art, good ideas will benefit you in the long run, because you have to know how other people have done it to employ it yourself. For example, Citizen Kane was a 1940s film by Orson Welles that was very influential in its presentation, editing, cinematography, everything was very ahead of its time, and it's because Welles knew he knew what came before him, and he looked for ways to better it, ways to make it different, ways to think outside the box, and that's the reason why that movie is remembered. Why so many from that period are forgotten, because it was creative, it was ahead of its time. The next one that I have is to steal shit. Just steal a lot of shit when you're trying to become more creative, because that is one of the #1 ways to improve your creativity. I think we all know the classic phrase, good artists borrow, great artists steal. But I do think that it's very true. I mean, director Quentin Tarantino, if you ask him, he can literally tell you that everything in his movies are taken from other movies. So-and-so is from so-and-so. This is from this. Star Wars is based off of this movie. So, as you can see, really, nothing is really original, but it's the way that it's presented, the way that it's conveyed. You can make something old into something new by stealing. The next tip that I have for enhancing your creativity is to know yourself, to know your strengths, to know your weaknesses, to know your comfort zone, your boundaries, know everything about that, because that's the first step in breaking all that down and going past it. You have to challenge yourself to become more creative. For example, when Steve Jobs was developing the iPhone, he knew the limitations at the time of himself, of his employees, of the company, and he chose to go past it. He chose to look for a different way to do it. Here's an example of this happening. He used the ramostam and the diaphragmohedron, and that was very, nobody would have thought of it at the time. But the reason why he did that is because he knew his limits, he knew the limits of technology, of his coworkers, and he decided to push past it. So, you need to know yourself before you can really challenge yourself and become great at creativity. So, like anything else, creativity is a skill, something that you can work on and improve over time. It's important to maintain that childlike creativity that we all have when we're born, when we're coming up, because it's a lot more important than you think. I mean, director Paul Thomas Anderson, he's writing a screenplay with his 8-year-old son. I think he sees the value of a child's creativity, and he's like a creative god. So definitely keep in touch with that, and just remember that it isn't some superpower. It's a skill like anything else, and all skills can be mastered. So get out there and get to work.
Yeah, okay, you're at 7 minutes, so you're already doing better. Okay, so, so I said, great job making your moments. Like, I liked your movements a lot more. I think it was a lot more engaging for the eye to follow. So we already talked about, like, what are your creative obstacles? If you want, I can just write some down that, like, you've gone through personally, so you can, like, reference them.
True. Yeah, let me rack my brain.
So if you want to think about that, I'll just keep talking. But I can write those down for you, and we can, like, make a story come out of it.
For sure.
I wrote not the end all be all. I think that's really important, because I think that that's applicable to so many people. Because some people are like, well, fuck, like, I'm here, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I don't know how to move forward. So, like, these brick walls aren't the end, which I think is a really good emphasizing point. For your advices, like branching out to different creatives, I think you could list some examples of that. Like, because there's so many different creative outlets, like directing, videography, you could paint, you can knit, you can crochet, you can sing, you can whatever, like it is. So like referencing different forms of outlets, I think would be a good way to be like, oh, well, I crochet, like I'm really good at that, like I think that's, because then it creates other ways for you to think creatively. So like, I think
like the more forms of like creativity that I do, like the more like applies to everybody.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
Agreed.
So like listing those out and like making them known so people can be like, well, I sing, like I like singing, I'm creative, like look at me.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I like stealing shit. I feel like that's funny, so keep that. And then I would say scratching at someone else's idea. Like I would make that a point, like make that something that you mean to say, and referencing Tharp in her book, because I think she does bring a lot of good stuff. And then knowing yourself, boundaries, challenging yourself, and then I liked your reference to Steve Jobs, and I like your reference to the directors and Picasso and all that.
For sure.
But I'm missing like you, like your personality, your humor, like your obstacles, stuff like that. So like bringing like knowing yourself, like what are your creative habits, like what do you do that makes you creative? How do you bring that into your daily life and bring that into the lives of others, and like incorporating and encouraging creativity. And then for the skills, I liked how you did that at the end because it kind of like builds to something. I don't know if like there's research, if you have research for this, or even if you need it, but like I think talking about the right and left brain and how we should make them more cohesively together so that you can be more creative in your logistics and you can be more logical in your creativity.
Yes.
So.
Did you write that down?
I can.
That's good.
Okay.
I think it's like since I don't have it all done right now, it's like
I
I'm
get
kind
it.
of a little more nervous, but I feel like once I get everything, I'll be able to like be myself and like be confident, and because it's like it is something I'm really passionate about, so it's like I don't think it's gonna be hard for me to like really go at it once I'm done. You know, I just had a wicked idea too. I saw this the other day that was kind of cool about like starting anything new, which was like, and like I think it's applicable. Like I could do like a little visual example. Like this is how people think that they're gonna improve when they start something new, but it actually goes like this. Yeah. And I could talk about like this and how like people call this like the valley of disappointment because they're not growing as fast as they think. But like it's just kind of like something you have to stick with. So I don't know. I think I can maybe put that bad boy in there. I just got that idea, so. Yeah. Yes. Sorry, I get a little excited.
I think it's really like coming together though, and I really think you had a lot more prepared than you thought you did. Because I mean, you're at 7 minutes already, and I've been working for 20. So just that kind of stuff, and then I think you could still talk about corporate jobs and like how you can create creativity in corporate jobs, because I think that that's a place that it lacks most of the time. Like that's one of the major places it lacks, or even just like in like school, like how can we make school fun for kids when they're literally inherently creative, like that's what they are. I can write that down too, but stuff like that.
I also think that maybe I should, I don't know, I think that I want to do something like, because I had know yourself and like your like creative, or like your limits is like my last one, but I think it might work better as like the first one or something like that. Like, I don't know.
I feel like that would be fine to rearrange there, just because you could talk about like your, like establish your personal and like credibility almost in creativity with knowing yourself and like telling a story of like, well, I was this and now I'm this and this is how I've evolved and this is how I overcame that value of disappointment or whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I do like value of disappointment. That sounds good. But doing that, do you want to start at the advice part, or you?
Oh yeah, when I list the 3 things.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, this is paper. But you're killing it right now.
Thanks,
you're crushing it. I couldn't even tell you're nervous, so making progress.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Is
that still going? Yeah, because the light's on, right?
Okay. I think it's still on. Oh, maybe not. Oh, I hope so. No, it is. Haha.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right, the first step I have to offer you today to enhance your creative abilities is to have a good understanding of other creatives, most of the time it benefits you to know the best creatives in your field. You know, say if you're into music, you look at some of your favorite artists who you think have pushed boundaries or have been inventive. For filmmaking, for me personally, since I'm a big fan of movies, I think Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. This movie was released in the 40s and was extremely groundbreaking in its delivery, its presentation, its editing, story structure, everything. And I think it's because Wells looked at his other creatives, he looked at his contemporaries, and he understood their strengths and their weaknesses, and he employed what he liked and excluded what he didn't like, and was able to make something really ahead of its time, really really memorable, really effective. That's the reason why that film is still remembered today. So yeah, if you know good creatives, if you know even bad creatives, you can think of what they do well, what they don't do well, and you can pick and choose traits from them that you want to study, and you can focus all of your energy into that. The next step that I have for enhancing your creative abilities is just to steal shit. Steal as much shit as you can. It's really beneficial. I think that we've all heard the phrase good artists borrow, great artists steal before, but it still rings true to this day. Everything, or mostly everything that you enjoy is probably stolen from something else. Here's some examples. Quentin Tarantino says that everything in his movies is taken from something else. This guy is based off this guy. This scene is just a rip off of this scene. Star Wars is just a copy and paste of this movie. Your favorite song is just this song. So yeah, the more you look at it, the more it's kind of evident that not a lot of things are 100% new, and there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing is expected to be 100% new, but it's important to take what you like and try and convey it in a unique and original way. So yeah, stealing, just steal a lot. It's good, it's important, and emulating what people have done before you is a very good way of learning their process, you know. The final step that I have is to know yourself, know your boundaries, know your strengths, your weaknesses, know everything about yourself creatively, so you can just smash all that down and try new things. It's very important to know what you're good at, what you're bad at, what inspires you, what stumps you, and all that, so you can work on reforming it, you can work on challenging yourself, getting out of your comfort zone, trying new things. For example, this author, you know, he wanted to write a book, but he wanted to do it differently, so he decided to write it between the hours of 4 a.m. and 8 a.m. every day instead of his usual time, which would have been at sunrise to noon. And everybody, critics all agree that the mood of the book, the writing style, and everything was drastically different from anything that he had ever made. And this was simply just because he chose to write at a different time. So even the most minute change can result in a really effective, creative progression in your career. This isn't just applicable to forms of art, though. It's also important to think about thinking outside of the box in the workplace. I mean, there's a reason why, say, Warren Buffett is remembered over Joe Nobody, because Warren Buffett, you know, he chose to think outside the box when he was developing whatever company, and you know, you can see this is evident in the way they held their meetings, and the way that they formed events, the way that they rolled out products. It was all focused on creativity and being ahead of its time. And that's a reason why he's remembered and why Joe Nobody is not.
Slay. That was good. That was good. No, it was really good.
Spitballing now.
You're really good at bullshitting stuff, so.
Thanks.
So
These are my strengths.
Okay. So, I liked your other outlets of creativity. I think that was good, and I think that people will be able to relate to that
For sure.
overall. And I liked how you said, like, I know with my film background, or like whatever you said during that
For
aspect,
sure.
like making it like about you. Like, I like that.
I keep forgetting to do that. Like,
No, it's okay. I know it's
experience
hard. I know
other
it's hard. I know it's hard. And then with stealing shit, not many things are 100% new. I like that because I think that that's also something that people struggle with. Like, no
For
one's
sure.
gonna care. Like, no one cares.
Yeah.
Because it's already done. Learning your process. Like, break down what your process is for like stealing shit. So if you like something, you're like, oh well, I want to take this little piece and mush it with this little piece. And
I just got the idea because I do a lot of like short films for fun with my friends, and I was thinking I could literally just be like, this video I did was just stolen from this one. This was stolen from this one. You know?
Absolutely. No, absolutely.
Like, kind of get rid of like the negative stigma around stealing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wait, I think this is pretty good right here. Could you write down creative habit page 62?
Yeah.
Oh, this is good. This is good. Sorry, I just looked to a random page and she's talking about like people like recreating things that from their like memories, you know, and what they've already experienced.
Okay. Creating. Good.
Thanks.
And then know what you're good and bad at. I like that. And then instead of saying like, I would say being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because I think people are more like likely to resonate with that than like just be uncomfortable. Like it's like learning what you like and learning you don't like and pushing yourself to your boundaries. Like
For sure.
making sure you're getting comfortable and being okay with being uncomfortable in uncomfy situations. The one thing I did notice this run through is you kind of were like moving a little too much this day.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like you're nervous. That's totally fine. Don't be nervous. I'm not judging you. But like making your movements like have meaning and like strong.
For
Like,
sure.
Like yeah.
So just like pacing. Yeah.
Yeah. Just there was a little bit of pacing, but I think that that was just maybe because you're like thinking while you were going, which I get. I do think with knowing yourself, I think you should talk about the value of disappointment in that. I think
For sure.
that would make like the most sense. And this time, like this is like the meatier part of your presentation, right?
Yeah.
Like these three. Okay. Let's try having the knowing yourself first instead of the
like
branching out first. Like
Yes.
know yourself first. Yeah. So I'm gonna write that value of
Gotcha.
disappointment. I'm gonna put number 1 next to this. Number 2, number 3. So let's do it again and have you start with that first. Is that okay?
Yeah, for sure. Start with
The knowing yourself. Yeah.
All right.
And talk about your value of disappointment in that.
Definitely. For sure. Okay. The first step that I want to offer to you all about becoming more creatively skilled is to know yourself. Know your strengths, your weaknesses, know what you like, what you don't like, what makes you excited, and what is a drag to you. I think that's very crucial to then breaking out of those boundaries later on, because you can't break a rule if you don't know the rule. You can't change something if you have no clue what it is. So it's very important to understand that. When I first started filmmaking, I kind of was constantly disappointed with what I was making because I expected my progress to be more on the linear side, when in reality it's much more on the exponential side. As you can see right here, this little area right here is what many call the valley of disappointment. But the more I learned, the more I realized that that's crucial to the process. That's crucial to learning any skill really, but it's applicable to creativity as well. So knowing that, understanding myself, and realizing that maybe all this discouragement is just an illusion in my head, I was able to push through that, and I was able to make new things that were challenging to me, that pushed me out of my comfort zone, and that really were just new horizons for me as somebody who wants to become better at being creative. The second idea that I want to give you guys is to steal shit. I know that sounds bad because we're taught that stealing is wrong, but it's very important in the creative world to steal as much as you can. We have been making art since the Stone Ages, so it's important to remember that not everything is entirely new and original. For example, this movie that we all know and love is just a shameless clone of this movie. This song that we all love sounds a lot like this song back here. This TV show, they already did it back in the 50s. You know, so not everything is original, and that's not bad. I mean, all of these new things, they took what was already there, they took the groundwork, and they transformed it into something new, they reinterpreted it, they looked at ways to make it different, to be more innovative, be with the times. Director Quentin Tarantino has often said that everything in his movies are stolen, and he's listed it out, and he's completely shameless about it because he knows that it's important to creating something new and creating something important. The final step that I want to offer to you all today is to broaden your horizons. I think to be a good creative in your field, it's important to know the good creatives. It's important to know the best, understand why they did what they did, why they're remembered, why they're so influential, and why you want to emulate their qualities. So, for example, you know, if you're a big fan of, I'm a big fan of filmmaking, so I frequently look to Orson Welles, you know, when he directed Citizen Kane. There's a reason why this film is remembered so much more than its competitors. It's because he branched out his horizons. He looked at everybody else, saw what they were doing, had a good understanding of creativity in filmmaking, and chose to really pursue strengthening his own creativity and creating something new. So as you can see, it's not just important to know the best, but it's also important to know, I'll just say the worst, you know, it's important to know who didn't understand creativity, who didn't do it good, so you can know not to make their mistakes. On the other hand, it's also important to know who is the best, because then you can attempt to emulate what they did. Like what I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with stealing. So if you have good knowledge of other creatives, of others in your field that you want to pursue, it really can't go wrong.
Yeah, that was really good.
Thanks.
So I remember we were talking about creative obstacles. Have you come up with any? And have you thought of any?
Oh shoot, yeah, let me think of one.
Because I'll write some down so you can like reference this back when you are like really running through it for the last couple times. I think I want to make sure. Okay, it's still recording.
I definitely know that I have like some that I can probably think of.
Just like bouncing ideas off of that and how you can make that a story or like whatever. I think that would be helpful in making your point that much more effective overall. Let me see, what else did I write? I still would say something about scratching after you steal shit.
Sure.
And then that was a really good run through. I really like that. I still wish there was more personal experiences of your own, but I know you're working on that, so I'm not gonna harp on you for that anymore. But if you just want to like bounce some ideas off of like what would be a funny story of like your own creative obstacles or whatever, if you want to think for a minute,
for sure.
That's cool. But I just think that like I love stories, like when people are telling stories, so I think it's that much more involving when you can tell them.
I could talk about how I was gonna make a short film with my friends before Thanksgiving, and then they like all bailed on me. So the night before, I thought of a completely new thing and just did it the next day. That could be like part of, I guess, challenging yourself. Still mad at that, but something like that, you know, or like, I definitely go through like stages of bad, like just creative block. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like writer's block. I just don't know I don't have any good ideas. It's really discouraging. I could talk about that.
What do you do to overcome those blocks? Like, how do you get yourself out of that hole?
I usually just like watch something, or it's like I usually will watch like a movie or something for the first time, and if I like it enough, if it affects me enough, then I'll usually just try and emulate it.
Okay.
Or that's what I try and do.
Okay, so creative block overcome by watching a movie or engaging in other outlets.
For sure.
Okay. Okay. I like that a lot. I think that's really good. So let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
When you're starting talking about creativity and like being creative, referencing those creative obstacles, how you overcome them, and then like making sure that people know it's not the end all be all.
For sure,
into
for
that.
sure.
Okay.
Alright,
You can start whenever or wherever. It's up to you. Just towards the beginning.
for sure, for sure. This painting right here is Pablo Picasso's Bathers. It was a 1918 painting. It's a nice painting to look at composition-wise. It has pleasant colors. It's a nice little scene of these girls on the beach. It's a solid painting. But 10 years later, Picasso chose to reapproach this painting, and he brought us this. 1928, this one's simply titled Bather. Now, this might come as a shock to a lot of people. It's style, because it seems very childlike. It seems almost as if he regressed the progress that he was making as an artist. But he doesn't see it that way. He sees this as a way to, Picasso was not trying to improve traditionally or technically, he was trying to improve creatively. It's well known, his quote, every child is an artist, the problem is how to remain one once we grow up. And I think that that's very true. Creativity is something that many people lose when they grow up, when they age. You hear a lot of people who are older or even our age say that they aren't creative, they don't have a creative bone in their body, it's not them. But I want to make the argument that creativity is a skill just like anything else is, something that you can learn, something that you can grow in over time, something that you can develop. And we should all make sure that we maintain that skill, that we better it over time, because it's not just beneficial to art, but it's beneficial to all facets of life. Many people think that when they hit a wall creatively, that it's the end-all be-all, and that it's just not for them. A lot of people get discouraged. Their doubt will just stop them dead. But just in the same way that learning a new concept in school or learning a new instrument isn't always going to be smooth sailing, you should remember that when being creative, because it transfers over, it's applicable. Many people think that when they start something, there's going to be this linear growth seen in this chart. But the reality of it is it's a lot more like this, which is this exponential one. At first your changes are slow and steady, but soon once you hit your stride, you're able to achieve anything you want in that field. So this right here is called the valley of disappointment. It's where a lot of people choose to give up at. But if you're aware of that, you can pass through it. And you can really shoot for the stars creatively. Know what I'm saying?
Okay, that was good.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're starting, I would start at one side, and then as you kind of engage throughout the beginning, you'll start walking.
For sure.
And then maybe stop for a minute and talk about the graph or whatever's behind you, and then keep talking. You keep going and keep elaborating more, and then when you talk about the value of disappointment, be at the other side, be kind of opposite of where you were to show this is where you can be without saying that.
For sure.
And then so I would even ask a question within your speech, when you're obviously you talk about hurdles and obstacles that you may have to jump over, but saying what are think about some of your creative obstacles, how have you overcome those, what have you done, what are the steps you've taken, and then you can be for me, and have that be a stand moment. Talk about well, I just engage in more creative outlets to enhance my creative mindset,
for sure,
something does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
okay. Yeah. Okay. I like that though. I think that's good. But another, I don't know if you would do this if you're actually presenting, but you turn your back a little bit to the audience. So I would make sure your shoulders out.
Yeah, for sure.
A little dance. But I like that. I think that's really good. Let's do the conclusion now, the end. I don't know if you were talking about the skill set there, the creative skill set you can create from, the advice that you just gave them, or how you want to do that. I don't really remember how you ended it, but start there and then we can work on that, because I think the beginning and the middle is really set.
For sure. Okay, let me,
Yeah, you can take your time.
I think that the conclusion is like my weakest part now for sure. We're trying to figure out how we could make that a little bit better.
I do think incorporating the right and left brain would be cool.
For sure.
At some point, I don't know if you want to do that, and you can totally take this as a grain of salt, but I just think people like to hear about the way their brains work.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
ingraining that a little bit would be good. If that's at the end, I don't know. But let's see what I wrote. Yeah, I think you're just talking about like improving creativity and talking about like child like behavior and
For
childhood.
sure.
You talked about a guy who uses his son to write a
Oh, yeah,
script.
yeah.
Talk about that.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna jump right into this.
Okay.
These 3 tips, while not being everything you need to master your creative side, are very crucial to improving everything creatively. I mean, this will not just benefit you in the art world if that's what you do, but it'll benefit you in the corporate world, in your day-to-day life, and problem solving, all facets of life. For example, one time when I was a little kid, my cat was in a tree. My dad was like trying to get it out and he had no idea what to do. My brother used his little kid brain and said, why don't you just shoot a squirt gun at it? That's something that adults just don't think about. Kids' brains are wired differently, and it's very important to stay in touch with that creative side because it's surprisingly effective. There's a director, Paul Thomas Anderson, one of my favorites, who's writing a movie with his son. I think he understands the importance of a child's mind, and he understands that when you're at that age, you don't think about limitations or perceptions from others. You only think about what you want and just what kicks ass, like kids just like crazy things, and I think that we should embrace that more. For example, ready for this? I hit writer's block for a while when I was trying to think of a short film idea for some so-and-so film festival, and I was really down on myself. I was really unmotivated. I was questioning whether I should even do this. But then I kind of sat back and I remembered these tips. I said to myself, why don't I first start by knowing myself, knowing my strengths, knowing my weaknesses? So I evaluated what I'm good at. I'm pretty solid at putting a story together. I'm pretty solid at getting a shot with the camera. What am I bad at? I could bring out a little more from actors. I could do a little bit more on the music side. So once I knew that, I knew what to focus my film on. So from then on, I looked at other pieces of media, I branched out, I watched things that I thought would be a good story to tell, and I just stole aspects from them. So as you can see, this shot from this movie was very influential for this shot for my movie. This one part was very reminiscent of this scene in this great movie that I really love. A lot of ideas were from that. The character of this guy right here was based off this guy. So once I knew my strengths and my weaknesses, I was able to utilize that. I was able to challenge myself, and I was able to take what I liked from other pieces of film and put them into mine to create something that was original and that was creatively challenging but ultimately satisfying. So if you know these 3 traits and you really work to employ them in your day-to-day life, I think that there's no way that it can't benefit you. So get to work,
Yeah.
Get to grind.
Love it.
Thanks.
Love it. That was so good. I loved your story. I wrote Squirt Gun Tree story. Amazing. Child's minds don't have limitations. I like when you said that because I feel like people forget that.
For sure.
And then risks and crazy thinking too. Yeah. Let me see I don't know how long this is, but I think that that's really good.
It's 1:24. It's like almost over.
Oh my gosh, we have 5 more minutes. Okay. Super good. I think that overall, I haven't seen your slides, so like maybe work on this a little, like to update this.
Yeah.
But overall, like just keeping that story and making sure your personal experiences are intertwined in it and like
Yeah.
have like identifications of like, oh well, I resonate with this and so can you, like
For sure,
why.
for sure.
And then I like to really get to work. Like that's funny.
Definitely.
I know like as you practice and run through it, maybe fully through, you'll probably get more comfortable with the material, but I would just recommend like doing that a couple times to get with the flow of it. But I did like the knowing what you're good and bad at first. I think that kind of eases into like the steps a little bit more. And then like working on your positioning, like making sure you're moving with the growth of the
For sure, yeah.
Okay.
I go like this.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's so perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that's, I mean, I think that's all I have.
Yeah, I think that we're set, you know.
I think you did a really good job though, so slay to you.
I think that I think it's just like, just need to put it all together, but have all the ideas, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, let me get some
I think
snaps
you can
of
just
these.
have these, I don't know.
Oh,
They're
okay.
from Ashley class.
Gotcha.
So, there you go.
Appreciate it.
Let me stop this. Want to do it one more time?
Wow, look at these great notes. Yeah, so yeah, I'm down to go.
Okay,
Go
I'll
through
start
one
a
more time.
timer for you, and then, yeah, and we can do one last little run through.
This ends at 1:45, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll get out a little early. But just one last little run through, I'll sit, so we can, okay. Ready when you are.
Absolutely. This is Pablo Picasso's Bathers, a 1918 painting depicting a serene scene on a beach. It's very traditional, very conventional. It's pleasing to look at. It's a nice little scene, compositionally, everything's there. So it might come as a shock to you to see that 10 years later he revisited the scene and gave us this. This is simply titled Bather, and it's in stark contrast to his original painting. As we can see, it's a lot more on the childlike side. It's a lot more abstract, simple. So many may be scratching their heads as to why, instead of pursuing the technical side of painting, you know, focusing more on the realism, on the composition, on the scope and scale of his paintings, he instead did this. And that's because Picasso was more interested in his creative growth than his technical growth. Picasso famously said that every child is an artist. The problem is remaining an artist once you grow up, and I think that it's very true and it's very valuable. You know, creativity is something that we all start out with as children. I'm sure we all remember doing crazy drawings, or you know, painting Shrek blue, and you thought that you were like a savage for that. You know, so like stuff like that. We just wanted to think outside the box and stuff. But a lot of people lose that creativity as they age over time. You know, I hear many people nowadays say they're not creative. They don't have a creative bone in their body. They just do so and so. They don't do anything creative. But creativity can be found everywhere, and it's important to develop your creative skill because it's beneficial to you, not just in the art world, not just in making something, but in all facets of life, business, problem solving. So I've done a lot of talking about creativity, but how can you actually develop that skill? Well, firstly, it's really important to know yourself, know your strengths, your weaknesses, what makes you comfortable, what makes you uncomfortable, so you can just shatter all that and try new things. You know, if you don't know a rule, then how are you going to break it? You know what I mean? You have to understand yourself as a person, as a creative, to know what you'll be good at and what you can work on. For example, Picasso knew that he was good at painting very technically, conventionally correct paintings, you know, that had that had correct anatomy, that had good colors, that had good composition. But he wanted to explore that other side where maybe he wasn't as comfortable painting this scene right here, which is a lot more on the abstract side. We can see that he knew himself and he wanted to constantly challenge himself with new styles, new methods, new colors, new shapes, things like that. That's why he's still so widely remembered today. The next advice that I have for you is to steal shit. steal a lot of shit. Just anything you like, just take it for yourself and just replicate it. I think we all know the classic saying, good artists borrow, great artists steal, and it still rings true to this day. I mean, I myself am a filmmaker, and pretty much all of my ideas are taken from other things. This right here, this shot from one of my films is stolen directly from this from this from this from this. If you ask a director like Quentin Tarantino, he can name to you every aspect of his movies and what that inspiration was from. He's very avid on movie watching, so, you know, this character was based on this movie was based on this was based on this. It's important to remember that not everything is new and original. In reality, most things aren't at all. Everything's already been done before if you really think about it. So it's important to know that, and it's important to not be discouraged to use somebody else's groundwork to build up your own creative ideas. The final act, or the final piece of advice that I'd like to give you today is to broaden your horizons. It's to understand the field that you're working in, what you want to improve in, and to branch out, to maybe watch a movie that you wouldn't normally watch, listen to a song you normally wouldn't, and try and see the appeal, try and see what they did, how it might be effective to some. So, you know, maybe this might even be like watching or doing something that you don't enjoy and trying to understand why some people do. You know, it's important to understand good art to make good art, or it's important to understand good ideas to generate your own good ideas. For example, this guy had a very extensive knowledge. Citizen Kane, 1940s. Orson Welles. I really often look at this movie as inspiration for myself personally because he understood what was conventional, what was traditional in cinema at the time, and he decided to just completely break it. But it wouldn't have been possible without knowledge of these other movies, these other forms of media. Another example is this movie. Joe Nobody took this movie, he took a lot of inspiration from these foreign movies in France. You know, he looked at French New Wave in the 80s and employed that into his film in America, which was, you know, he was well versed, and it paid off in the end because he understood what good creatives before him had done. So, to wrap this bad boy up, it's creativity, like everything else in life, is difficult but worthwhile. It's a skill that you can develop over time. You know, you can get better at it in all sorts of ways, and it'll benefit you not just a creator in the art world, but in all facets of life. So I encourage all of you to try and approach something differently, and maybe experience something that you normally wouldn't experience. And people oftentimes talk about the right brain and the left brain. The left brain is the creative side, and the right brain is the information side. But there's a way to merge these together in a way that will benefit you. We have a study here that shows that these people who are creatives, more creative than the average Joe, did this, and their brain waves are interconnected or something like that. You know, so yeah, the more that you know your brain and try and mix it up, the more creative you'll be. Sorry, I was kind of running out of steam.
No, it's okay. It was really good. You got 7 minutes and 13 seconds. The farthest you've been. Slay. I can send you this video too, so if you want to see like what you did. Hold on.